Hi everybody, my name is Cliff Matthews, pastor of St. Luke Missionary Baptist Church. I'm your pastor. And I've come today here at the St. Luke Missionary Baptist Church here in near Uptown Charlotte to introduce to you a sermon series that I'm working on that I hope you will be encouraged to listen and to share. We are living now in some unprecedented times, are we not? We are facing a global pandemic that is wreaking havoc around the world, and in particular right here in our own country, and in particular right here in Mecklenburg County. We are watching how this world is trying to figure out what to do next. We are seeing families grieve the loss of loved ones. We're trying to figure out what are the next steps. The economy is reeling, persons are stressed, the communities around our country are in turmoil, and in the midst of all of this, we have seen, have we not, how long-held views have come back to the surface that work against our better angels. In the midst of all of this, one of the things that I have been comforted by is the very presence of Jesus that walks with us each and every step along the way. So because of that, I have began reading the book of John in my own devotion. And as I begin to read through the book of John, I began to understand how the narrator of the book of John gives us some real rich biographical sketches of persons whose lives, not because they were so good or so bright, not because they were the best that God had, but their lives were changed simply because they encountered Jesus. It is with that notion of encountering Jesus that I come to introduce this sermon series to you. The theme of the series is simple: encountering Jesus. Throughout the book of John, you find either placed on the lips of Jesus or upon the lips of others this phrase, "Come and see." We are invited, are we not, in the Gospel of John, not so much to a theological argument about who the Lord is. If I can just take a few moments and do a little teaching, the Gospel of John is perhaps the latest of the Gospels. It comes to us at a time somewhere early in the 2nd century when it became clear that the expected return of Christ was not going to happen, did not happen in the 1st century. The Christian community was living through a difficult time of transition. They had lived through the persecution started by Nero and expanded under his successor, Domitian. The early Christian community now is attempting to communicate to those around it what it means to believe in Jesus. And they offer us not so much arguments and debates. This is not so much an apologetic. You don't have long discourses in the Gospel of John that talk about, let's say, how you can know for certain. You don't have a lot of philosophical arguments that are given to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt who Jesus is. Instead, what you have written to us in a time of tremendous transition is this gospel that simply says, if you want to know who Jesus is, come and see. It is an invitation to an encounter that can change your life. And that's what I want to focus on over the next 4 weeks. I want to show you how 4 individuals given to us, they could be real or they could be the product of the writing community, but how these 4 persons, these 4 sketches that we're given, really show what happens when a person encounters Jesus. So these 4 personalities are really about who we are. It's really the story of our lives. These 4 sketches, the biographical sketches we're looking at, they're really about who we are. And it gives us, Christians today and in all times, an invitation to come and see. We're going to look at someone who had 3 strikes against them. 3 strikes against them. And normally 3 strikes means you're out. But we're going to see how when this person encountered Jesus, Jesus steps into their space, shows up where they were, and Jesus showed this individual that 3 strikes is an out, reminding us today that when you think it's over, God always has the last word. We're going to encounter also someone in this sermon series who had something wrong with them that kept them kind of immobile for years. They had, in essence, perhaps given up, and they were looking desperately for a miracle. Have you ever been there before when you were looking for a miracle, looking for the Lord to do something to turn your situation around? We're going to look at this individual who was somewhere where miracles are supposed to happen, though rarely, and they were looking for a miracle. And Jesus shows up. And the miracle with which this person had been hoping, that miracle necessarily didn't occur, but something did happen. We're going to really begin to search for the miracle in that story, because perhaps it helps us to understand that we might be the miracle, our own miracle, that we're looking for. The third person that I want us to see in this sermon series is someone who entered this world with a defect. And that defect became a cause of great conversation. For that particular sermon, the preacher's going to step aside, because I've got assurances from heaven that this individual can show up that particular service. And that individual will give their own testimony that talks about their experience. They were there that day when Jesus showed up and they encountered Jesus. Oh, there was a lot of conversation about the individual, and even Jesus's disciples were deeply engaged in a theological argument concerning why this brother, this person was born with a defect that they had. Jesus shows up, challenges the theological arguments of his followers, and simply goes about to show us, the church, that too often we engage in arguments that don't really get the job done. But this individual tells us and shows us that when they encountered Jesus, something happened that had never happened before. And to close out this sermon series, I'm going to introduce you or reintroduce you to someone that you probably already know. This individual shows us that it's never over until God says it's over. I'm going to talk about this individual who belonged to a family that wasn't the best or the perfect family. They had some struggles in the past, but they were friends of Jesus. And we're going to look at how they wrestled in the context of grief, how they wrestled with the loss of a loved one, and how they wrestled with the absence of Jesus when they thought they needed him the most. We're going to look at all of the tension in that particular story. And we're going to see how Jesus does show up, making a bold statement that is too often misunderstood to be talking about something on the other side of life. But when you read that text closer, you'll find that Jesus wasn't speaking only about the life to come, but he was talking about the life in the here and the now. Yeah, I'm going to tell you about that individual, and they're going to give us a prime example of how to get your life back when life itself has taken it from you. Well, I know you know that right now we can't change a lot of things, but what I can offer you is a chance to walk with me in this sermon series on this journey to encounter in this sermon series, perhaps for the first time or anew, the presence of Jesus in our lives. When we encounter Jesus, I want you to know our lives change forever. Not only our lives, but our world changes forever. So I invite you now, beloved, come with me, walk with me, as together we dig deep into encountering Jesus. God loves you, and so do I.